everywhere.
Yes, right from your Android or iPhone. Download the Radio K-Man app now on your Android or iOS phone.
The Radio K-Man app
is where you can listen to Radio K-Man everywhere you go.
Everywhere we go, we go. Everywhere we go, we go.
Find it in the Google Store, the Apple Store, or use the link at www.radiokman.gov.ky.
Yes, now you can listen to Radio K-Man everywhere.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio K-Man's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio K-Man's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Well, if today is your birthday and if a week ago it was, well, I'm hoping there's still a celebration in store. Despite all this unfolding, much to be grateful for. 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio K-Man's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. And it's only Tuesday, the 15th day of the third month of March, if you go on the calendar we use. Not long ago, it was only 10 months, and then the ego and arrogance of leadership, increased it to 12. Who knows? It might again be shortened or extended. You never can tell. The folly of man. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. Want to invite you to be a part of a discussion and place your call and share your thoughts. Off the bat, though, I want to share with you something that a very good friend relayed to me earlier. The scripture talks about life and death is in the tongue. We're reminded of the power, of the spoken word. Oftentimes, we hear that the pen is mightier than the sword. I've added to it. Well, you can't erase the spoken word. I remember as a very, very young boy, and my travels, perhaps the only thing that may have been of real and great value, sometimes watching the One-Eye Monster, as the good friend would refer to that screen that we put on our walls and, sit around endlessly, sometimes mindlessly, numbly, just glued to. There was the Ad Council sort of reminders of how we speak to children in particular, the importance of the words, how it could affect them in a negative way. So much so that perhaps many of us have recognized the importance of speaking positively, being surrounded with and by positive things and people. Well, this good friend shares this thing. Let me share with you. Tell me what you think, because it's not just about what you say and what you do and how you say it and don't you say it and when you say it. You got to do as well, but sometimes, if your words and your actions, as another very good friend just reminded me, less than 24 hours ago, they should align. Sometimes when they don't, it's not only because it's not seen, but it's probably because it's not evident at that time. But it says, replace sorry with thank you. Instead of saying, sorry, I'm late, instead say, thank you for waiting. Instead of saying, sorry, I forgot it, say thank you for reminding me. So what an incredible way to change your mindset and the mindset of those you're apologizing to. Words are powerful and they are empowering. 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp. You can share a thought with us either by texting it through or speaking it and having it recorded, or just, sharing your perspective with us, and then we will more than happy to read it with the rest of our listeners, so that you never know, and that view that you have might actually resonate with someone else. It might be a thing that they themselves were thinking about, how to say it, but not quite sure, if they should say it, but whether or not it would be received in the same way that you say it. That inspires and encourages them, but gives them a sense of safety and security and solidarity. So share your perspective with us if you so choose. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, as I look at a couple of the WhatsApp messages here. This one in particular has an interesting ring to it, quite familiar in the sense that when we look at how just in the last day or so, the ruling from the Privy Council, this comment from one of our listeners now, as I read it again and again, I'm trying to determine how the best way to put this through. We've seen a press release from the Office of the Governor. We've seen the Honourable Opposition Leader send out a press release as well. Says, based on the Privy Council judgment, the judgment says it is more elective than mandatory for the laws to support same-sex unions. The House therefore needs to revisit the legislative changes on these unions. And this is the one comments that seems like the last government was eager and anxious, including the governor, to vastly change the legislation, and now all the laws have to be changed again on the Privy Council's judgment. And the anxiousness to pass civil partnerships legislation, for those that have that, have now to realize that legislative changes that took place in amending our local laws to fit this now have to be amended again. It's unfortunate that the UK rammed this legislative process through and forced it upon the people. I pray that this government now has the good sense and judgment to sort it out in line with the recent Privy Council ruling. Well, how do you interpret that? Do you look at it in a welcome relief? Does it add even greater clarity, as some have shared? Is it more confusing? Well, your perspective. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp, 925-3261. Now, this other message, when I spoke with the individual just prior to coming on air, his view simply was that maybe there are too many times when the country itself feels that it has a greater sense of autonomy, not just financial autonomy, but to some extent the opportunity to legislate for itself, its domestic affairs. And the notion that when the Constitution was put in place, the idea being that it should be a living, breathing document that is at the very least revised, revisited, or somewhat reviewed every 5 years to keep it current. Not necessarily his perspective that we'll constantly be making amendments to it, but we'll keep it under review. And he says, well, that perhaps fell by the wayside, same as the development and planning legislation, or when we try to figure out what is best for the country to move it forward. Well, he asks us to ask the question, as a populace, where are we? We're in the 21st century. Is it important that our Constitution and our laws remain the remit of our Parliament? Should it be like some jurisdictions where the courts not only can declare an incompatibility but can legislate from the bench? Should it be a case where the courts look at something, say it's so, and then leave it for the elected parliamentarians to decide how best the electorate wants the matter to be handled. Whether the parliamentarian, now he did say in that respect, he found on a number of occasions over the recent years that as much as he politically disagreed with Mr. Ezra Miller, the MP at the time from North Side, he found that he stood on principle and conviction, and when he was, sort of convinced of a particular perspective, he was unshakable. Not, as the fellow said, not indignant and unwilling to listen to reason, but he thought at the last election, Mr. Miller's stance that it was fair, it was just, it was the right thing to do to allow, all in the society to enter into some sort of marriage, quote unquote. Now, he didn't say that was Mr. Ezra's words, so that they are afforded the same rights once they have a legal age and they consent, irrespective of the same sex or otherwise. He thought, that may have cost him the election, but it's a matter of principle. He says it's probably the same when, in earlier years, he stood on principle relative to health care and the like. And he said, if that's the case, should we then be looking at parliamentarians who are prepared to do the same? Well, you be the judge and you share your thoughts. 949-8037, toll free with the compliments of flow, 1-800-534-8255. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
King Sports Center takes pride in being more than just an ordinary gymnasium. For 14 years, their multi-purpose facility has been providing the community with a variety of sporting, recreational, and relaxation activities. King Sports Center has a bowling alley, lounge bar, multi-purpose rooms, powerhouse gym, rock climbing wall, bungee jumping, a 10,000 square foot rink, and so much more. For more information on the variety of services, call their friendly staff today at 946-5464 or email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Subway is serving up a special new sauce, bursting with flavor in every bite. The new Savory Collection is a tropical sweet and spicy sauce made with a combination of spices, habanero peppers, thyme, onion, black pepper, ginger, citrus juices, and molasses.
So good.
Wow.
Sensational.
Delicious. Subway's Savory Collection pairs perfectly with our oven-roasted chicken or steak sub. Savor the flavor. For a limited time, only at Subway. Subway. Eat fresh.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for sharing us. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. And a couple of the interesting topics sort of related to us increasingly. We're very grateful for the team, Mr. Duke Monroe, Mr. Greg Anderson, and DT from the off-rig, the office as they're called, coming in yesterday, share with us relative to fuel prices. Now, many of you have responded positively, getting a better perspective through their information sharing exercise as to what is happening within our community. And some of you appreciate very much so that we just sort of take it when it comes to pricing for the most part. Our suppliers and retailers buy an open market, they bring it in, and we as consumers, together with government's regulation relative to safety, perhaps their taxes/duties on importation, well, that helps, no pun intended, fuel the prices. But if you think about it, the demands that we place on government for the services, from the roads to schools to education, housing, the like, well, they have to be paid for somehow. Now, the question to be asked, is it possible, just like we see just Barbados announced, they're reducing the cost per litre. Do we do the same as we did with CUC, bring it down by 50 cents on the gallon with a direct pass to the consumer? Would there be a temporary interim measure that the government should consider if our prices do escalate, as some have speculated? Or is it a case that we as consumers find a way to offset that? Maybe this would be an opportune time that we missed, as many of you have been quick to remind us. We missed many opportunities in the past to take a better look at our society, be more responsive and responsible. Some would say the most recent one has been the opportunity to retool and retrain, the sector relative to tourism when it comes to not just employment but entrepreneurial opportunities. We've missed it, maybe following Hurricane Ivan and the mad dash to rebuild, bigger and better and bolder, as some would put it. Well, was that the best thing? Some of you would agree without any comment. Others would say, well, again, missed opportunities. Well, here is a chance now to look at how we use our resources. We leave the home, 4 and 5 of us, in 4 and 5 individual vehicles, going to almost the same place. Is it a better way to get there? Could we look at safely walking or riding our bicycles to get to some of the places? Now, that would not only need a better sense of awareness and consciousness, and a greater sense of actually not just feeling but being safe on the roads from other road users, but even those who may go out to exercise have found that not only do they stop and have to be mindful where they put their step when others have come with their dogs and just let the dogs do what it wants where it wants, and you step in it and then that ruins your afternoon. But worse, perhaps to be chased and somehow, frightened by this unleashed dogs. Little things that may seem insignificant to some, but is very, very unnerving and perhaps in some instances dangerous to others. But can we do better? Should we? And if so, how? Now, maybe again, just a small measure that may cause us. Fellow shares something sometimes that we fail to appreciate, and that in times of pain we can get growth. In times of this level of challenge, we may experience an opportunity to improve. It isn't that you have to always see life without any thorns. The rose can only sometimes be enjoyed after you clip the thorns. Well, what is on your mind? 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp, 925-3261, and help us to understand it. Then the other thing that we wanted to perhaps ask of you, some individuals who have recently had, as one said, wasn't too inclined, but because of business, had to travel. The other said, felt that need, that so had to sort of get off the island. I was grateful to the trips to the sister islands, and sometimes the trips over the recent years, to different districts to spend a weekend or two. But just had that feeling that, need to get off and not just visit with family and friends elsewhere, but to see a different landscape. Well, they've returned, whether it's parts of the US or in the UK. And now I've returned and said, well, things there seem, especially in the last few weeks, seem almost normal. They are not what we've seen in the news, and now it's not in the news so much simply because, well, we're preoccupied with the situation in Russia and Ukraine and the like. But it says, why are we now still forcing increasingly this mass messaging with wearing masks indoors, and we're dropping certain things? Is it now timely to do that? Well, maybe I'll ask of you and you can weigh in. There are many of us who would still vehemently oppose any such measure, and there are some who would probably have said from day one that they never really thought it amounted to much help in terms of transmitting viruses and the like. But again, it just shows the growing division, but perhaps highlights that over time we become much more informed and knowledgeable, and hopefully better positioned to respond to things. What is it they say? Hindsight is 20/20. Well, a simple question was asked, is it now timely that we consider dropping all the mask mandates, indoors, outdoors, and other ways, especially as we welcome, increasing numbers of tourists to our shores, with the imminent arrival of the cruise industry returning. We can see the hotels and the restaurants and the rent-a-cars seemingly enjoying, a greater uptake. Hopefully the sector not just rebounds, but in a much more productive, a much healthier way. Again, your perspective. Is it something that we should consider? Well, you let us know. 949-837, 1-800-534-8255. Or WhatsApp, 925-3261. Then the other point that we wanted to ask, we had a chance, I would say on Monday morning, but when you think about it, that was only yesterday. I'm still not sure about you guys, but one day to the next could almost seem like 1 week or 1 month sometimes. And yet, as the week goes on, you wonder Monday to Friday if it is indeed, only the 5 days. Feels for some it's been extremely long. For others, it's not long enough. There's so much demands on their time. But when we were chatting with a couple of individuals on Monday morning, and as they were looking at where the country is headed, a fellow gave a small presentation relative to the consumer price index over the last 15 years, and he thought that even though we could take out some of the blips from maybe 2008-9 and others, he thought, well, is the inflation exactly what has been reported? Is it that it's just a generalized average? And what about some households? Well, give us your perspective on what you think the cost of living has been like, and I will share you what he feels it's more like. So stay tuned, and we welcome you right after this break.
Subway is serving up a special new sauce, bursting with flavor in every bite. The new Savory Collection is a tropical sweet and spicy sauce made with a combination of spices, habanero peppers, thyme, onion, black pepper, ginger, citrus juices, and molasses.
So good.
Wow.
Sensational.
Delicious.
Subway's Savory Collection pairs perfectly with our oven roasted chicken or steak sub. Savor the flavor. For a limited time, only at Subway. Subway. Eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray, and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
The 6:30 p.m. weather report, Monday through Friday, is proudly sponsored by CG Britcay. Insurance, health, pensions, life, where people come first.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. So a quick message right off the air, and I say this carefully, although I recognize the caller's voice, and he said, just share it, not so much in jest, but he says, like so much that's happening around the globe, people feel increasingly pressured as if they have less and less choice. He reminded me, and as I said, I do know the individual somewhat. He reminded me that many years ago, because of an illness, the physicians had advised that the family, or when visiting the family member who was at that time recuperating, that they should consider certain protocols, not like a hospital setting, but don't ignore some of the things. So the hand washing, when they would visit, they wear certain gowns and the like, just for the short term, because that at that point may have been helpful. And you sneeze, you cough, you talk. Sometimes you don't even realize it, that you may be ill. Now, nothing transpired that, thank for the cause, the family member to get unwell. The family in general seem to have taken a better approach to health relative to getting some sunshine and some exercise, laughing, fellowship, more often, going out to the boat, and even eating and exercising. And I said for a long time, everybody seemed to have adopted that lifestyle. One or two have, in the years since, consistently continued with that sort of healthier approach to living. One of them, being a member of the Seventh-day Adventists, adopted, the plan from way back when, and was sort of guiding the rest of the family. He said he couldn't remember the acronym, and I was trying to think of it as I come back from the break, so my Adventist friends can tell me. But it talks about exercise and getting sunshine and sleep and the like, and it is a holistic approach to health. But he shared in sort of the quick minutes of the break that unfortunately sometimes we seem to forget that good common sense. Just like we ask physicians to have bedside manners, we as patients sometimes don't want to listen to that, don't want to employ certain things. And one would appreciate that, for instance, if you cooked a meal and you were going to refrigerate it, have it for another day, that you wouldn't leave it out for hours and hours and hours. You would try to get it refrigerated in a timely way, refrigerated at a proper temperature. And then when you go to use it, well, you will reheat it. Some would ensure that even the containers that they use to reheat this leftover food are containers that they think are safer. Not plastic that would melt easily, not certain things that may react to the foods. Some would probably only reheat it on the stove and the like. It is, I guess he says, not just through a sense of being informed, but that sense that what you're doing makes for improved health care. But he shared that in so much now, it's almost as if people are being forced without any explanation, and then when they ask questions for clarification or for greater edification, they probably get maligned. He says, take for instance, as one of those individuals who engage in the forex trading, there were people who looked at him, well, that's risky. He said, well, perhaps it is, But if I have a comfort level with that risk, if I feel that that sum, whether it's $100, $1,000, or 100,000, that's the amount I can, risk. And if I lose, I lose. I'm not that, worse off. If I win, I win big, and I'll be that better off. For some people, it just depends on the comfort. When he was buying cryptocurrencies, again, people saw it, well, it's risky. Now, increasingly, he shared, there are more and more governments, and especially in the Western world, almost forcing sort of a central banking sort of digital currency. Now, he said that he saw stuff in Canada, in the UK while he was traveling, that this would eventually, be the move to replace the paper fiat currency that we have. Now, for those of you who may know, you can tell me if this is accurate, but he says he understood that the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK, so the individual that controls the purse strings, as it were, and what is it that we attribute to that saying? Show me who controls the cash, and I'll show you who calls the shots. Well, they said, they're moving towards that. Now, there isn't, in his mind, anything wrong with digitizing certain things. He has taken many of the family photos and placed them in a way where at least he has digital copies. So too with much of his, other important official documents, from passports to driver's license, and just to have them as a reference just in case. During hurricane season, he puts some of those valuables as instructed in a watertight, secure place where he can easily take them with him. But he also has copies elsewhere. Now he has digital copies as well. But to his point, do we want to be forced that the only way we can pay for something, for instance, is with a piece of plastic or digital form of payment? He remembers not long ago being in a room relative to financial planning and fiscal responsibility, being told that a credit card can be a very dangerous thing if misused, if you don't understand the importance of it. If you're going to spend $1,000, know that when the bill comes, you can have $8,000 to repay that expenditure. Likewise, if it's 100 or 10,000. Now, there are many who would leverage that to enjoy a vacation or to make a purchase and then pay it back over an extended period and at an exorbitant interest rate. He said at one point one of his credit cards had a 22% interest rate. It's reduced to 18%. He thought, for good little break, only to realize that there were others who had better sort of financial rating and may have had an 8 or 10% interest rate on credit cards when the norm was probably 18 or 20%. But he shares, just like how the use of a credit card was frowned upon, better to have cash, and when it's spent, because you're using your budget wisely, you now know that you have no more funds. Well, if the flip side, you have a digital wallet, as it were, and that was able to be controlled not just by some entity that wants to be malicious and hack into your system and not just affect your personal ID, and but also maybe block you access to so much. Well, what if a government was to do that? Now, he shared again that those sorts of comments may lead people to think, you're just being, inflammatory, you're a conspiracy theorist. But is it, far-fetched to believe that it is probable? Now, would it possibly happen? He's not suggesting anything nefarious. But his thoughts were quite interesting, and he sent an article that I've sort of scanned, but not read to an extent. But to your point, are these things that we should be considering and discussing? We see our own government looking at a national ID program where it would not only aid in identification of individuals, it would be through the e-government platform, allowing us better access, perhaps more efficient, effective, and cost-effective access to relicensing our cars, making applications for certain things. Now, is that level of convenience something that we should quickly embrace? Or is it like our foods? They're quick, they're cheaper, they're convenient, they're fast, but are they necessarily best for us? is it that you can get as healthy a food as quickly and convenient as you can get the unhealthy? Some would quickly say no. Others would say, well, yeah, just a little bit of planning and programming. Now, like everything else, is this a case where we need to be very, very actively engaged in what is transpiring? Ask questions relative to the motivations, what is driving the whole thing, what are the expected outcomes. I mean, take, for instance, if you wanted to renew your vehicle's license, if you had to go to physically attend a place of business, and there are only a handful of them available to you, and it may take half a day or even, an hour and a half. Now, would that be time and money well spent? But what if that process could be done in a matter of minutes? You sit by some electronically and internet-enabled device, you upload in whatever format the requisite documents, you make the payment in the accepted form, and there you go. Your vehicle has been renewed. Now we know that exists through the DVDR, .gov website, and without too much effort, you got your car license renewed. Some would say, wow, great improvement, significant cost savings to you and to the government, and therefore hopefully that savings can be passed on where government can utilize the resources that were spent on that sort of physical structure and personnel can now be redeployed somewhere else. But then some would say, well, are we comfortable and confident that whether it's the government services that are being provided, whether it's your banking services or some other thing that is you pay for through the private sector, that your personal information, your data, the level of security and confidentiality is protected so that people aren't able to get in and just for fun or for malice, run amok with your personal data and thereby your life. Well, it's a question of how trusting we are. It's a question of how well we deploy the resources and how secure the infrastructure. And like anything, this probably improves over time as we learn from experiences. I guess that's why, sometimes longitudinal studies are just that. Over 15, 20 years, they'll learn more as information on the subjects unfold, and they're able to distill that and come up with a better informed perspective. Well, sometimes someone has to be, they don't use the word often anymore, the guinea pig, or say the early adopters. Well, it's probably one and the same, huh? 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. Well, we're going to come back after our news break. I'm going to welcome a discussion relative to Social Work Month. A number of students from the social work program over at UCCI will be our guests. Get a chance to talk about the program, perhaps invite our listeners to consider not just the importance of social work, but how the degree, the practice itself, isn't just for the public sector. Maybe there are other correlations with private sector jobs, other great rewards, not just the fact that you're serving the humanity through the program and through the education, but you're also getting a great reward. So we have a discussion for about a half an hour, and then for the remaining hour, we'll have some, more open line. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Let me tell you something. I've been fishing our island since I was a boy, and it's getting harder and harder to get a good catch. Maybe it's because there are so many more people in Cayman than ever before. Maybe it's because of how the climate is changing. I don't know about that, but I do know that I want to be able to keep fishing and teach my children to fish one day as well. So it makes sense to me that we have certain areas and certain times of the year to fish for certain things. This year, a new rule was placed on fishing for grouper that says no one can fish for nass or grouper anywhere in Cayman from December 1st to April 30th while they're spawning. There is also no fishing allowed at all for any kinds of fish in the spawning zones, and no scuba diving there either. It feels unfair not to be allowed to fish where my dad had taught me to fish, but I know that being patient now means we can keep fishing for many more generations. We're all in this together, right?
For more info, download the Cayman DOE app or visit doe.ky.
Tune in Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. for the Daily Sports Report, covering local, regional, and international sports. Proudly brought to you by Dr. Wayne Porter, offering a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. Call 946-9020 to book your appointment today.
They really made a mark. Vroom, vroom. No, I can't get this out, you know. You mean them tire marks? Yeah, boy. That John Reno revving up his bike up in here, you know.
And we gotta get it out too, you know, because more honorees coming on next week.
I can't wait to hear more inspiring stories.
You'll join us this Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. on Radio Cayman, 89.9 FM, for YouthFlex, the program for all people, by young people. YouthFlex, more than talk.
Continuing the Caymanian tradition.
Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
Let's spread the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. The Royal Cayman Islands Police Service Air Operations Unit continues to develop its staff and capabilities and contribution to the service's goals of securing the Cayman Islands, ensuring safer communities, and delivering a professional police service. The last few months have seen the unit conduct 2 overseas deployments to the Turks and Caicos Islands, the promotion of one of the unit's key staff members, and the continued training of the unit's first aspiring Caymanian pilot. In international news, a Russian journalist has been fined and released after she protested against the war in Ukraine on a live TV news program and made an anti-war video. Marina Ovsyannikova, an editor at state-controlled Channel 1, was detained after she ran onto the set on Monday holding a sign saying "No war." She also released a video calling the war in Ukraine a crime and urging Russians to protest against it. Russia risks being scientifically isolated as countries cut their ties with state research institutes, an expert has warned. A nuclear physicist who is Foreign Secretary at the Royal Society, Professor Robin Grimes, says that damage will take a long time for Russia to repair. Researchers will be unable to participate in high-end cross-border experiments, and he says they may leave Russia to pursue their research elsewhere. U.S. police have arrested a man following a string of 5 shootings, all targeting homeless people as they slept. A masked gunman struck 5 times in 9 days in both New York and Washington, D.C. On Tuesday, only 2 days after a multi-state manhunt was launched, D.C. police said a suspect had been arrested for homicide. D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department had posted new photos of the suspect, offering a reward up to $55,000 U.S. for tips that led to his arrest hours later. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Captain Keith Parker Tibbetts, MBE, JP. Following the 1932 hurricane, like most young men growing up in Cayman during the era, the call of the sea was heard more strongly than any other. Keith Tibbetts Sr. of Cayman Brac was no different. After assisting with the rebuilding of the family home, resurrecting the family car, and helping other relatives and the community rebuild, he built and sold several catboats before going to Jamaica to seek employment as a seaman. In 1936, he joined the Canadian banana boat Lady Somers and eventually found himself involved in the global war effort. Keith participated in the evacuation of Dunkirk in World War II. He served in the Merchant Marine from 1939 to 1940, and then as a seaman gunner on the Jamaica Pioneer. On D-Day, Keith Tibbetts was off the coast of France, manning an anti-aircraft gun. Following this, he joined the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, where he served until his ship was torpedoed and sunk by a German submarine. Following this, he took a job on a tanker, which was home-based in Trinidad for bunkering American convoys, carrying military personnel and supplies to the European allies, becoming chief engineer. Following the war efforts, Keith continued the shipping trade, moving into boat building with his brothers, joining the Trinidad Shipping Company and National Bulk Carriers. This was part 5 of a special Sister Islands vignette series dedicated to Captain Keith Parker Tibbets.
I'll be back. I've got 22 more days.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history. Explore your land. Explore your Sister Islands. The ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
The number one sports shop is your number one best choice for all of your sports training needs. At the number one sports shop, you'll find sporting goods from the world famous Nike and Puma brands, training tops, compression tops and bottoms, shoes, and for after the game relaxation, slippers. And there's men and women's sportswear apparel. And while you're there, explore the number one shoe shop and their wide variety of women and men's shoes and a grand selection of women's handbags. The number one sports shop and the number one shoe shop on Hospital Road in Georgetown, 949-5595.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm always honored when two things collide. Politics and coffee. Miss Wanda, keep it PG. No, it's a blessing truly to be able to have an opportunity to share with our friends over at UCCI relative to their continuing expanded program of social work. And when we see through, I guess, DCFS in particular, that almost unending, untiring, unselfish giving to a wider community, this shows that we're building a capacity within our society. So as we talk about Social Work Month and as we speak specifically to the social work program at UCCI, Ms. Felicia Robinson as the program director, I'm told. Thank you so much for coming on, being a part of the discussion, together with the students and with your colleague, Ms. Leonora, for helping us to appreciate that social work is not just all-encompassing and sometimes almost exhausted. It's probably exhausting as well. And, through acts of service that we see constantly, it reminds us that we draw hand in hand and make a heartfelt contribution. So to you, Mom, good afternoon and welcome. Please pull that mic close to you. Let's pretend that we're going to sit around the table, have a good game of six up, and see how it takes us. Welcome.
So, good afternoon. Thank you for welcoming us and having us here from the UCCI Social Work Program. We have 5 students with us: Vanda, Krishna, Betty, Abigail, and Estefani. And Miss Leonora, one of our faculty members, is also with us.
So I mistook her for one of the students, so I appreciate you.
Not today.
You sure?
Yes, definitely.
All right. Well, it's for me, it truly is an honor. When I see students assemble, I always enjoyed being in the classroom. Sometimes I actually learn things too by paying attention, but I was enjoying in there. maybe for our listeners though, what is social work? What is like the social work sort of degree and diploma? Like as I talk to each student, perhaps to you, Ms. Felicia. I mean, we hear social work increasingly, and maybe we're not really appreciative of what it is.
So, when we talk about social work, very often you hear people say they're doing social work within the community. When we speak about social work, we're speaking about social work as a profession, social workers who are trained and who understand all of the elements of the helping process. Social work has its particular aims, but help is always in there. And we work with several client groups across the population. Essentially, we say that there's no area or aspect about the individual's lives that social work does not connect with, or there's nothing that's happening within your community or society that social work does not connect with. So if you're talking about families and family breakdown or family preservation, social workers are in the middle of all of that. If you're talking about children and child rearing practices and parenting, social workers are in the midst of that. If you're talking about grieving and loss, if you're talking about natural disasters, social workers are part of that process, helping to respond. If you're even talking about social development and climate change, social workers are part of that process as well. So we are everywhere, and this is really a good time, we think, for our students to highlight exactly what they are learning or preparing for in terms of a profession.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I'd say this sincerely, even though, they may be hopeful, joyfully to my persona, the respect that I have for study, but for this particular study, it's profound. The work that you do, as Ms. Felicia shared, we go into the community, we volunteer as people, and we say we're doing social work, but to actually make it a qualification, make it your call and your vocation, it just shows a strong commitment to our community. To the students, perhaps Ms. Vanda, maybe to you first, if that would be fine. You've transitioned from, a great athlete on the world stage, not just within the Caribbean, but on the world stage. You've been an indelible feature within our society, volunteering from way back when. Your even personal career development. Now, as part of the formal study, why that formalized move to it? What called you?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dwayne, for such an awesome introduction. For me, it's been a natural progression. I've always been in the human services field, in the community through sports, youth ministry. And I think that, having been at the Department of Children and Family Services for over 6 years now, it's become the dream to really just finalize my career goal, settling in there, furthering my studies. So for me, it's really just being able to finalize that so that I'm able to go into the community and use, enhanced skills and knowledge to be able to help others.
I mean, if I can say this respectfully, knowing of you, this is almost a perfect fit. The only thing would be the deputy governor or the premier. I mean, your willingness to serve the country, to lead, to and I say that not just to thanks for my attempt at joke, but you love people, you love this place, you want the very best for them, and that is everyone who knows of you understands that passion. So this is a good fit. Maybe Miss Arch, maybe of you. I mean, you could be an accountant, a physician. You could be anything. The civil engineer, social work. What called you to it?
Good afternoon, Dwayne. Thank you for having me here. Actually, I did start out wanting to do nursing, and I had done the first aid course within CIFEC, so Cayman Islands Further Education Center, and we did some rounds on the wards, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, nursing, that's where I want to go. And I realized afterwards, after getting into the degree, it's not really the sciencey part of it that I wanted to do. And I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. So then I went to business until I could figure out what I would want. And then I took a break from school, came back, and then I was talking to the dean. I want to do something, and I don't know what you guys have to offer. And she said, we have this new program called Social Work Program. And I talked to her about my interests, and it was through talking with her I realized what I really enjoyed about doing the nursing program in the beginning was not really the sciencey part of it, but more the people aspect. So getting to know people, listening and sitting with people and hearing their problems and wanting to help. So that's kind of what started me wanting to go on the social work journey without even really knowing in the beginning that that's what I wanted and where it was going to go.
And I guess thus far from what you shared, you can find that what you studied in nursing and business all kind of comes together nicely in helping you in your practice eventually, but in your studies no.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
Especially the people aspect of it, like just meeting with different types of people.
Well, before we ask Ms. Brown at her perspective, Ms. Brown, your view. Ms. Betty, yeah. See, it's like volleyball, you fake to the left.
Passing the ball?
Yeah.
Afternoon, thank you. Well, for me, I always felt like my life circumstances had led me to it. Growing up, it was pretty tough at home. I come from a single parent home, so I kind of understand the experience that many of our Caymanians face today. So I think, social work just aligned perfectly with my values. And it just picked me out the blue. So I think that's, it's just what draw to me, I think.
No, I will get into that. And hopefully through others, they'll see that this is not only a good program to study, but a good place to start. And true. I was thinking that you said you come from a single parent. I have a single mother and a single father, so I'm a single parent. Just wondering. Maybe I do. I don't know. All right. You no. Okay, Miss Abigail. How does it work, Mom? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Yes, Mom.
Yeah, I don't think it worked because I think that means we would all be in the same boat. So you'd have to either. Boat? Whatever kind of boat you want. I leave that up to you. Whatever floats your boat. But back to your question.
Yes, Mom.
So, initially social work was not the plan. I wanted to still want to do forensic psychology, but it's not something that UCCI offers. So we just went with the next best thing.
All right.
Right? And, I said next best thing because it wasn't what I wanted initially, right? But while being in the program and, seeing all the stuff outside when we do our practicums and stuff like that, you're exposed to a lot of things and you realize that our community actually needs us and that social work is very important in our community.
If it's okay with you, and please, I say this respectfully, don't answer if you don't wish. That doesn't infer. Forensic psychology, why you wanted to do that?
It again with helping people, but it was more because I felt that group of people needed a bit more attention. So when I say that group of people, we're talking about like people with mental illnesses and the judicial system and how they are dealt when things happen.
So is it the advocacy or the investigative part that you like, that you can delve into it and say,
I think it is overall interest.
Okay. So perhaps social work could fill that.
Definitely.
Still?
Definitely.
Who knows? You still may pursue that passion later on.
Yeah.
And I love the enthusiasm, the forthrightness. You see that level of assertiveness. Gutierrez, you're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. Ms. Marnette, what about you, man? Good afternoon to you, Stefani.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us.
Right.
So, like Krishna, I bounced around through degrees as well because I didn't know what I wanted. And then Dr. Williams at UCCI, he was like, you should meet with Miss Robinson. I think you guys are a perfect fit. We met. We were a perfect fit.
We still are.
Here I am.
Sorry, you need counseling? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
This is a good day to have that discussion. Yes, it is. Time is right.
Yeah, so I've always been passionate about helping people. And when I was choosing my degree, I wanted to make sure I was doing something that wouldn't only give me a sense of purpose, but it would also be meaningful. Because so I believe everyone could do, like, get rich and do stuff like that. But you have to have, like, a very high level of dedication to be in social work. Because from the exposure that we've had, it's hard. Like,
it's a calling, huh? It's a calling.
Yeah, it is. It's a calling, yes.
Yeah. And this is why I approach life with a greater sense of positivity. I love life. I even like some people, few I like, most I love. But you have to have that, right? And you give of yourself. So, just Felicia, from that perspective, you've been, different facets of government here and elsewhere. And social work is that glue that cements us, right?
Absolutely. We cannot have a society without having social workers there. We will always be needed. It's actually one of the fastest growing professions globally. And when we see the issues, even if you just think about what's happening with Ukraine and Russia,
yes,
you see the displacement, you see the loss, you see the terror, you see the pain. Definitely, social workers are involved in that work. In terms of international social workers, they are in the Red Cross. Social workers are within the UN systems, and because we've got skills, we've got the planning capabilities, we've got the policy knowledge, and we've got the practice, so we know how to connect and address human suffering and pain. So we absolutely need it.
And I mean, other than problems behind social work, the fastest growing is talk show pundits. I mean, that's
social workers do that too, because we are trained to do advocacy, we're trained to do lobbying, we are trained to be change agents. So in talk shows, definitely there's a place for Vanda.
Go girl.
And I think we could also add Anna Kay is at DCFS, and she is really good at these things.
Yes.
Well, thanks to Early Command and her training in the early days.
Yes.
There you go, Miss Miller.
So we're giving them the skills.
Yeah, no. Yes. But this is where I appreciate your, not just the jovial approach, but the candidness, because I think too many times as students, we go into the classroom, I take math, for instance, we wonder of the practical application. We don't see how trigonometry can come into play until you're contracting, you're on the site lining up the building. Sometimes, even as an accountant, you will appreciate the math skills, but you say, well, I have an accounting software program that can manipulate that. Sometimes the practical aspect of it isn't evident until you're hands-on. With you guys, you see it firsthand. You feel it in your hearts. You hold it in your hands. You bring the families together. There was a television show when I was young and had hair. The lady was Tim Daly. She was a social worker, and she was this imposing figure that would, blow through the courts and made sure that the child and the family were absolutely and that made me want to not necessarily be a social worker, but to be an advocate, because like Ms. Manette, the injustices that you see, to Ms. Gutierrez, society goes sometimes in terms of blind eye, because, well, who am I? I'm only one person. But that one person can be a strong advocate.
Exactly. Who is not to?
Yeah. Well, with that, though, can I then ask, when we look at the various sort of facets to different careers, I listened to, Miss Arch earlier. She could be a physician, right? She could be an engineer, just like the rest of us. But there are different parts that in the specialty. Are there particular areas of social work that exist? And if so, are there particular areas that maybe of interest? No. Ms. Vanda, we will start with you first, but not Ms. Felicia. Are there specialties within social work?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
So very often, most people know social workers in terms of they work in a clinical field. So you're working with families, you're working with children, child protection matters, safeguarding, you're working with elderly persons. So that's one aspect of it, the clinical. But then we've got social workers who work within communities, who work within large organizations, who deal with issues such as feeding, develop programs for persons who are hungry or homelessness and so on. And then you've got social workers, there's some newer aspects of social work. You've got social workers who are dealing with, and Estefany loves this, Estefany is a dog lover. So you
I wouldn't have known that.
Yes. So you've got social workers who are dealing with
like animal welfare.
What do you call it, Estefany? That's your dream.
Yeah.
Veterinary social work. And basically it's not that they're dealing with the dogs, they're dealing with the dog owners.
Animal welfare.
We know, yes, people who own pets experience a lot of grief and loss and so on when they're disconnected with them for brief periods. Maybe they're hospitalized or they're ill, or sometimes they die, whatever. So that is one of the newer areas of social work. You've got persons who are trained to deal with that particular aspect of the loss and grieving that owners face. So it's almost the equivalency of also helping to manage things like their adoptions and all of that. So you are there, you're doing the home studies of these adoptive pet owners and what. So social workers, their hands are in everything. So before in the past, Miss Lenore can tell you about this, we would get calls about there's a dead dog, you need a social worker, come and move it. You know, they get us anything they'll call us for. We're not dealing with that aspect now. So we have one of the newer areas of social work. We call it green social work. And can you think what that's about?
Yeah, let me see. Green social work. So we take a red dye. What two colors mixed to make green? No, I just kidding.
Yeah, so we're dealing with blue and yellow. So we're dealing with the sea, and we're dealing with the sand. So we get green. So really it's about environmental social work. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that with all of the climate change movement and so on, we recognize that social workers need to be involved in that planning, in that assessment phase, in terms of making plans as to how do you help persons to plan for sustainable development, to address their needs, to feed themselves and so on. So it is one of the newer areas. I think is a really dynamic area. Traditionally, social workers would go in just when the disaster happened in terms of then how do you help to reestablish persons in terms of meeting their needs and so on. But at this point, you plan around, the coastal erosion, the land changes, and all of that sort of stuff in terms of preparing people to deal with all of the aspects of as life turns, really. That's what it is.
Now, this is a 4-year program.
Yes.
And at the end of it, then you award a Bachelor of Science in Social Work?
Bachelor's degree, yes, in social work.
Okay.
Yes. We have, the program is designed, though, we call it in terms of stackable credentials, because there are sometimes people may start a degree program and for some reason life happens and they're unable to finish it. So if you finish the equivalent of the first year aspect, you can matriculate with a certificate. If you finish up to the second year, all those courses, those 60 credits, you would qualify for the associate's degree. But if you go the long road and finish it all, which is what we want you to do, so you become a qualified social worker, because a degree is what is required for entry as a social worker in the profession. Then you walk away with what, Vanda?
A bachelor's degree.
Bachelor's degree.
Yay.
Yes. So that is our aim. We want to prepare our students to be really on top of it, to go out there and practice as qualified practitioners with that degree.
So through you, Miss Felicia, maybe I could say to the ladies, this is the only bachelor I want you guys to have.
No, I wouldn't want to say that to them.
I just check.
No, social work encourages. I'm not dealing with that, Dwayne. I heard that. I heard that.
You heard that? Okay.
Whether they want to look for bachelor man or whatever category, that's up to them.
I didn't go down.
Yeah, I heard you. But there's nothing that surprises us in social work.
There you go.
That's the thing. We deal with everything. We deal with all sorts of marriages, relationships, broken, healthy, unhealthy, with bachelors, with spinsters, with whatever you want to call it.
And this is, if I might, I'm sure the students know that not just your intellect, your eloquence, but the way you pivot and the way that you present, it brings a level of interest in education and enlightenment into discussion. And I think as I just quickly discern from all of you, you have that skill set, so you can either diffuse a situation. I can see social workers at some point in time in the policing realm going along to assist with their mental health instead, or that situation where the person's inflamed for some reason that honestly they are a bit violent, but it isn't because of any other issue other than the situation now needs to be de-escalated. If I could, though, given this a 4-year program, Ms. Bella, would it be okay if I ask you, are there a particular interest that you want to pursue, and if that has that changed over the 4-year period? And then back to you, Ms. Wanda, and then I can go to year 2, year 3. Likewise, would that be fine?
Well, funny enough for me, I think when I first started, Miss Robinson can say that I was hooked on MASH, so child protection, safeguarding.
Okay.
I'm currently placed with MASH, so I'm experiencing my 1-2 dream. But I can't say there's a particular area that I want to gravitate to when I'm fully complete with my degree. I love, I think, all areas. I've been exposed to multiple within my practicum, and they have been fulfilling, I think.
All
so
right.
I'm pretty good.
Good. Well, not to switch the mic too much, but just go down 4, 3, 2, 1. As a third-year student, Ms. Barnett.
I like a lot of things. So I'm just gonna start like that.
To do everything.
I want to do everything.
That's the intellect and ambition. Yeah.
I want to do everything. So at the moment, I really want to do social work in the healthcare system. So at the hospital, that's what I've been pushing for. And I'm also interested in mental health social work.
Okay.
So those are my two main focus. But social work, like everything is interconnected.
Yeah.
I want to do this in mental health, but there's also, I recognize that there are things that need work, so that almost makes me want to do research in order to show like the needs of the community, so that there can be policy changes. So it's a lot.
No,
I like a lot.
I love the ambition, and this is where, as Ms. Felicia shared, you're change agents. You help to appreciate, and you're hands-on. You get a first-hand experience of what is happening. Ms. Arch, what about you?
Well, I'm a second-year student, so I haven't gotten as much well-rounded experience as maybe the fourth or third year has gotten. So I kind of feel like I want to do child protection, safeguarding, but it's funny you mentioned about social workers maybe having a place with the police or something, because mediation and crisis intervention is becoming a much bigger thing now, especially for social workers. So, and I've been doing my practicum placement with DCFS this semester, so I'm seeing how that is implemented more and more. So that might be an area that I might look into myself, and it's growing interest.
I commend, and this is where I think the vision, but also the level of instruction and guidance through your lecturers that you get it, and maybe as a society, as we make the transformative changes. I know that in saying this, it may sound offensive to His Excellency, and it's not the intent. Doesn't mean that it isn't perceived as such. But I always thought that if we invested in a diplomacy corps as opposed to a regiment, where we have social workers and economists and other social scientists working together to dialogue, where we have less need for arms. Guns versus butter was the whole economics, sort of debate. How do we get more people to be able to, discern the situation, de-escalate this, and then come to a position of dialogue, so that the decisions are not just consensus-based, but they're one that are helpful. Ms. Vanda, from your perspective, first-year student, you think your interests, what areas of interest you?
My interests, I'd like to gather more experience really in some other areas that I haven't before, such as adoption and foster care. Currently in my job, I work quite a bit with the community on a whole, with our seniors and so forth, which really is a great eye-opener. So I think that as I progress, with my studies, in the practicum areas in which I'll be able to work, will allow me to be exposed more. I do like working with youth and children. So I think that might be an area that I might tend to gravitate more towards, but I'm just really looking forward to having a better whole view and experience all around before deciding to specialize.
Awesome. So before we go to the break then, Ms. Abigail, if you wish to read, first year student, but then your interest in obvious intellect, and I love the assertiveness. What do you think?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm a first-year student. I haven't actually pinned down what I want to do, when I reach my 4-year mark. But since doing my practicum, I've also with DCFS, been working closely with the elderly team, and I've grown a keen interest, I guess, in the elderly, because I wasn't aware then of the issues that we had in our community with the elderly, in terms of sometimes, when abandonment, financial abuse, physical abuse, and all those kind of stuff. I just kind of thought that, you take care of your elderly.
Yeah, that's what we did, right?
Yeah.
That's what we thought happened, right?
So, but, unfortunately, it's not, it's not a general thing, but there are cases like that. So I think that even if it's a little bit, it still needs to be addressed.
One is too many.
Yeah.
All right. Well, are you guys comfortable for round two?
Definitely.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to cut the deck cards. We'll shuffle. No, just kidding. When we come back, please share with us. And I'm hoping that as more and more as parents that we talk to our children about possible careers, that we appreciate that there is a strong tie-in to all the work. And, whether you get a degree in law or psychology, or you be an engineer, there's a role for you in social work, and it's rewarding, it's invaluable. The contribution, I think, is immense. So, again, publicly, thank you for your studiousness. And when we come back, maybe share with us some more. All right, stay tuned for Talk Today.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office.
Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Wayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skin care, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drporterkman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
Did you know that ValueMed Pharmacy has a free online prescription service? Managing your health and medical requirements has never been easier with ValueMed. Simply visit value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com and click the Refill Prescriptions tab on our website. Fill in the information for new prescriptions or refills and choose your preferred pickup location. ValueMed on Walkers Road or Boddentown. Then bring in your original prescription from your doctor when picking up. There's no need to stand in line and wait for your prescription. Save time and pick up prescriptions at your convenience by visiting value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com.
Attention Caymanian job seekers. Do you want to know what jobs are available right now in the Cayman Islands? See all available jobs listed by occupation in the Jobs Cayman job directory printed in this week's local newspapers. Pick up the newspaper to see all available jobs listed by occupation. Then go to www.work.ky. That's WORC.ky to register and apply online.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks very much. And I gotta say a public thanks for this job, man. It may not pay well, but the reward is handsome. I get to learn so much every day. I get to laugh.
Curiosity killing cat.
And some days, I think Miss Norma say, man, that may be his last day. Find somebody else. But I am honored that we have a continued investment in education. We have a gradual transition to the University of Cayman Islands, where one day the law school, the school of nursing, the school of architecture, it'll be a full-fledged campus. I can see it now. The vision is there.
We share that.
We share that vision, huh? Yes. Well, when I become governor, it'll happen in this short order. But it's true that that healthy love for the democracy in which we live, that I can say that, because as students, you guys have not just, rekindle my love for studying. I don't like watching videos. I find that hard to see, to learn. I rather read something. Increasingly, learning is being delivered more and more. If I could ask, perhaps, Ms. Robinson, from that perspective, your delivery, your courses, we see the practicums, we see the students being pleased. This is very much hands-on. The instruction aspect, classroom, and
2 years ago, if you asked that question, I would say to you, it is in the classroom where students come into the class, and most of the instruction occurs in that particular way. COVID came, and things change rapidly. So we have been delivering through mixed methods. So we give instruction to our students through our modeling. Our faculty, we model for them what good social work practice is about, what ethical social work practice is. And they all smile. They know exactly what that means. But we also do instruction through the classroom. So they come into the classroom. Since COVID, we offer some of the instruction remotely. So some of them may opt to come into classroom. Some of them may opt to do their classes remotely. So if we're doing that mixed approach, then it's HyFlex. We love our students to come into class because that allows them. It's a much more dynamic, environment, but it also allows them the chance to build the relationships with each other. And that is really fundamental, I think, for practice. It creates a lot more support. They get to be able to reach out and to ask each other, but also to have fun learning and to do a lot of the enhanced things. And sometimes, remotely you're dealing with sensitive information. You're talking about really deep things, emotional stuff, and just being there so you can have each other around you, I think, is really important. But we offer that mixed approach, but really, essentially, our classes are supposed to be delivered face to face. We want that. We want students in the classroom. We want them without the distraction of home life and going through the drive-through, calling in Kentucky or whatever. And we see that they're laughing because very often I have to say, do I have a present absent student here? You sign in and you're present, but you're absent because you're attending to other things. But COVID has allowed us to give that flexibility. In terms of our practicum, though, they've got to be out there in the field doing that connection with their community and with their clients. And I think it's a good point also to say that while we do our field practicum here in Grand Cayman, we also provide our students with the opportunity to go to Cayman BRAC so that they understand that we are training them for practice in the Cayman Islands and not just in Grand Cayman. And that has been I think one of the real high point of our training program, allowing them the opportunity to go out there and see what the culture is all about, but also how the services are delivered there.
So an overseas secondment.
Absolutely, that's what it is. And you would not believe it, but every year that we take our students, there is usually about a 5 to 7% of students who have never been to Cayman BRAC, Caymanian students who have never visited Cayman BRAC.
But they've been there almost everywhere in the world, in some cases. So if I might through you, if the students are okay, you mentioned the practicum, and at some point I want to ask, how is that? But first, in the classroom, there's a theoretical learning, there's the exchange and sort of camaraderie of the classroom setting and the students. When you go into the field, is it an easy translation with what you learned in theory and what you see in practice, or is it and like the example with the student doing math and trigonometry and then goes on the job site to line up the house to, you see it in play, then you actually see the benefit of it. Is it like that, or is it like economics, completely different?
Oh no, it's like that.
It's like that?
The courses, they all build upon each other. So when you go out there, you can literally hear them in your mind telling you, remember this, remember that. So it's good. It's good. Everything,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a testament to the good instruction, but also the practicalness of the course. Ms. Arch, from your perspective, I mean, how do you find it?
I look at it kind of like scaffolding, so everything kind of builds onto each other. So when you go through the first courses like ethics and social work 101, you're learning about communication, listening skills, and then that kind of builds. And then when you get into the practicum experience, you're like, oh, okay, I need to actively listen, I need to listen to the client, and it kind of allows you to learn the theory aspect and then take it with you into the practical aspect. Okay. So I think it's really helpful how it builds on the knowledge. So you'll always have to use your ethics. So you'll always go right back to first year. You use your ethics, use your social work 101 skills about compassion and empathy. So you're learning those skills first, and then everything else after that builds on top of that. You'll always use it.
Ms. Bennett, from that then, when you talk about, I like the idea of scaffolding, you're layering, you're building, and you create a solid foundation. Active listening is taxing. We're here, there's 8 of us, I think. 1, 5, 7, 8, 9 of us.
Good maths.
Yeah. We'll have a calculator. But we have to listen, and we don't want to listen with our ears. We have to pay attention. And we need to be, if I could probably use the word, maybe inquiring. Some would say inquisitive. We need to be discerning. We need to ensure that when we look at things, we're taking in as much of the circumstance as possible. I say this with great deference to policing. That is probably one of the highest stress, highest skilled jobs, because that person is going to an environment, whether it's traffic management because the lights are up, whether it's some crowd control. So much is happening. As a social worker, it's probably very much the same. You're taking everything in the family environment. Listening and active listening.
Yes, not just active listening alone. I think you can sense a lot just by nonverbal cues from somebody, especially in the environment. But yes, taking education, what we learn in theory, into practice, it's just a smooth running overall. For me, I felt I've 4 years student, so I practically seen all stages. So we building from individuality, so micro level, to meso, working with groups, and then into community development macro level. You definitely learn, I guess, all the basic information that you need to carry up onto the next level to build so that you could address the needs within the community and assess, the problems that they're facing.
Okay. So Abigail, from that perspective, we see skill sets being developed. We see someone having innate interest in certain things, and the human being is a fascinating animal. Other than probably a dog, that's probably the very next best thing. Social work, forensic psychology, even economics, in that sense, come into play. When you think of the practicums to come and your career practice, how do you see that playing into the benefit of the community, and as your classmate talked about, formulating policy and shaping society's views? Do we see social workers as invaluable as I think they are, or is it just these people who come in, try to disrupt families and put down a heavy hand? I know a first year student, but your perspective in the career.
Yeah, so it's definitely not the way that I think the community has painted the picture about, social workers. And maybe it could be that because that is maybe the major thing that we experience in our community, in terms of broken families and, difficulties with kids. And maybe that's why they've painted that picture. But it's definitely not like that, because before it gets to that stage, there are many things that are carried out. And, not me, but the actual social workers that, carry out the practice, they ensure that they do their due diligence. We got to go through every step possible before we end up to that. We got to take the child situation, right? So I think that, yes, social work is very valuable.
Without question.
And back to what the ladies were saying in terms of taking the theory work into the practicum, for me personally, I have a different perspective, because I feel like I'm just giving the toolbox and you go out there and you use your tools wisely, right? Because it doesn't, what we learn in class doesn't always translate, because things outside happen so much differently than the examples that we get in our books, right? But if you were taught those communication skills in class and you go out there, and then you know how to use those communication skills. So that's how I see it correlating.
The wisdom, I tell you. I agree with you. You get the toolbox, and you know whether it's the hammer you need, the sword, the drill, or the thingamajig. Miss Felicia, Miss Barnett. Yes.
Yeah, just to add something, like what Abby was saying, what we see in the book is not necessarily what we see in Cayman. That's another thing from the program. Yeah. They do their best in order to give us Cayman examples, Cayman case studies. So we based our practice locally using the theory from overseas. So yeah, our program.
So I guess in a sense then, from what Estefan is saying, Ms. Felicia, we can take case studies internationally, but then we got to recognize that the Cayman context, even though there's a diverse community, there are certain things that be different. It's probably not unheard of to see police officers with armed guns accompanying ambulances to go to a space. For Cayman, we would never want that to be the accepted practice. But likewise, things are influenced by internationally. So when we come back from the break, how is the Cayman social work program, the Cayman social work context in responding to the needs of the community different? And how is it like from the academic perspective? And as the professor in charge, so to speak, can we talk about so that people get appreciate that math is math, but not all numbers are created equal. All right, I'm going to pause and take a break. When we come back, more talk today.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
It's in our name. Fried chicken, it's our thing. Others may try, but we have the original. We put the extra and extra crispy. And our secret in everyone's mouth. So if we want to make the best chicken sandwich, we just need to put our name on it. New Kentucky Chicken Sandwich. An abundant triple breaded filet, premium mayo and pickles, all in a buttered brioche bun. The best chicken sandwich had to be KFC.
Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center invites you to join them on Sunday, April 3rd for their second annual Turtle Crawl 5K Walk and Run. All funds raised from the event will support the conservation of green sea turtles in the Cayman Islands. So come on out and show your support. The second annual Turtle Crawl 5K Walk and Run. Learn more and register now at www.turtlecrawl.ky. Proudly sponsored by HSM, Rotary Central, Advanced Fire Services, Gatorade, and Radio Cayman.
The Cayman Islands government is honoring our uniformed services during its National Heroes Day Awards ceremony in Cayman Brac, Saturday, 19th March, hosted by the Honorable Premier and the Minister for Culture. Uniformed Services personnel, past and present, will be recognized at an invitation-only event at the Aston Rutty Civic Center. Watch this year's National Heroes Day Awards ceremony on the Brac from the comfort of your own home on the CIG Facebook page, CIG TV, cable and YouTube channels. For more information, email the protocol office on national events at gov.ky or call 244-1780.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, and welcome back. And as we celebrate Social Work Day, it truly is a learning experience, and I've enjoyed the laughter, and I'm hopeful that my misbehavior hasn't been too bad that would cause the ladies to say, boy, his mom didn't raise him better than that. But as we talk about the social work program at UCCI, the program director, Ms. Felicia Robinson, together with Ms. Leonora Winter-Young as associate professor, and 5 of the students, it's really intriguing, interesting, and very motivating to see how we have this growing deference for the work you do, and hopefully a growing appreciation that your job is a calling 24/7. It's not, like some of us where we clock in and clock out. And even though we may take our work home, your work is constant. May I ask then, from the perspective of Social Work Day, Ms. Felicia, you get a chance to sort of celebrate it and to appreciate the invaluable contribution of your career. Do you also reflect on it and say, well, it would have been a lot easier if I had become an emergency physician. At least I might have got a day off.
No, that wouldn't have been easier either. Because you're still dealing with a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dwayne, I've been in social work for more than 30 years. It's a long time. And I look back at that, and I look back at the experiences. I've been in social work in various settings. I've done the social work in a clinical setting. I've done it in terms of internationally. I've done it as an instructor in social education. So not a lot of areas that I've not touched on in terms of social work. So I would say that there are really no regrets about it. It's a commitment you've made to serve, and definitely this is a really interesting aspect of it in terms of establishing a program for training. If you want to impact on, the quality of social work generations to come, then this is the right place. And I think it was it's been a good decision. I get to work with the Abigails, who are very assertive, who will challenge the establishment, who will speak. We call her good little old soul in the program, actually.
I can see it.
Yeah, but the idea is that you get to challenge persons to be passionate about changing their communities, not for the worse, but for the better, making a contribution. And the program is established. You started by saying that, 2 + 2 doesn't always equate, right? That's what you said? Okay, fine. But the program follows the international standards of social work education. So the 9 competencies that international schools of social work follow, we also follow. Because we are not only preparing our students for practice in the Cayman Islands, we're simply preparing them to be excellent social workers. So wherever they go, whether it is within or outside of the Cayman Islands, they should be recognized as reputable, well-trained, competent social workers. So we follow those same standards. The beauty, however, of offering the program to students in the Cayman Islands is that they've got their ready lab here. So by the time they finish training, they know, for example, of the legislative framework in which they will practice. So they know what the definition of a child is in the Cayman Islands, the age. It may be different in another jurisdiction. They know what the needs of their older persons are in the Cayman Islands because they've done some placement, or they've sat in a seminar, or they've gone through some professional development experience where they get to understand what the issues are that confront older persons. We offer quite a few specialist courses, so they get to learn about conflict and mediation, so they get to be exposed to those skills. We offer a course, for example, that looks at specifically at women, the LGBT, and the disabled community. Why? Because those are key groups within our community that we've got to skill our professionals to be able to work with them, to understand them, to be able to respond to their needs. So by studying here at UCCI in our social work program, we are giving them a head start in terms of competency. They understand their population, they understand their needs, they have the experience through their field practicums of working with them, and so by the time they graduate and they go out there, they are well prepared to respond to the community needs.
And this is where, and even though we'll go to the news break in a couple of minutes, maybe I could ask, though, for those who are looking at it, social work now and social work in the future, what sort of changes do we see? Because it has gone through an evolution.
It has changed. Yeah. So when we talk about the ethics of social work, what stage are we in, Krishna? We're definitely in a stage where we are more focused on issues like other professions. the world has become a lot more litigious, and before you would not hear, for example, of clients taking action against a social worker for malpractice. We're definitely moving, and we've seen that to a higher level of accountability for practice, which means that you've got to practice with a higher level of skills, a higher level of self-awareness, and the whole idea is that you do no harm to your client. So you are held accountable. That is the context in which we are practicing now. It has changed. It has shifted. You're not just out there doing things because you think that social work is simply about doing good. That old definition of what social worker is or was, that no longer really applies.
So a level of accountability.
It is a profession with standards. We work driven by the evidence. If the evidence says that this is what works with this client group, we're expected to follow that. There are systematic processes. So you are bringing yourself and your values and your attitudes and all of that and your passion and your compassion, but you also have to apply specific skills. It is a skilled profession.
So that scope for discretion that we may have seen or may have been.
You talk about gut practice. You're practicing according to your gut, and somebody told you this or whatever. There's always room for that. In every profession, there's room for that level of, you are operating with a sense of discernment, but it usually comes from your experience. So, based upon your experience, you feel that this is the right thing to do. And it may be based on your ethical standards. You know that you've got to practice ethically. You know that this is not the right thing to do. You know that if you're asked to do X, Y, Z with particular resources, you know from your training then that that's not the way in which you should operate. We are expected increasingly in social work. Before, people could discriminate and walk by and say, but we don't care what anybody think about that. You can't practice in that same way anymore, because we are operating within a rights framework. Yeah, everybody know what the human rights are. Everybody have their expectations as to how they should be treated, and these were always standards within social work. But our clients are holding us accountable in a different way.
All right. So when we come out from the break, and I appreciate you sharing, and I increasingly maybe I'll ask this question, not only what specifically, if anything, you may have to celebrate Social Work Day, but we think of social work and social workers within the public sector, the government context. But increasingly we're seeing many large organizations employing trained social workers as part of their maybe their HR or their team building, their talent management, whatever they call it. So we can talk about maybe that connection and the differentiation, and of course anything that you guys want to share that inspires the teaching and learning. All right, after the news break, we'll continue the discussion.
Follow Radio Cayman on Twitter. All the latest information, breaking news, community events, and more. Follow us at twitter.com/Radio Cayman.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
The Human Rights Commission says the UK Privy Council judgment Monday does not preclude Parliament from introducing legislation recognizing same-sex marriage. While describing the judgment as a welcome clarification on the interpretation of the Bill of Rights, the HRC says addressing inequality between same and opposite-sex couples is an important policy consideration for elected government. In international headlines, U.S. President Joe Biden will travel to Europe next week for face-to-face talks with European leaders about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says Biden will meet with NATO and European leaders at a summit in Brussels on March 24th. He will also attend a scheduled European Council summit, where efforts to impose sanctions and further humanitarian efforts are underway. New U.S. sanctions today targeted more individuals in Russian President Vladimir Putin's power structure, including senior Russian military officials and the leader of Kremlin-allied Belarus. A judge and an investigator in Russia's prosecution of two outspoken critics of alleged corruption and rights abuses are also a focus of the sanctions. Anna Sorokin, the convicted swindler who claimed to be a German heiress to finance a posh lifestyle in New York, is making a new bid to fight deportation. Sorokin, whose scheme inspired the recent Netflix series Inventing Anna, was taken into U.S. Customs and Immigration Enforcement custody nearly a year ago. Attorney Manny Aurora says she filed papers Monday seeking to hold off being ejected from the U.S. Sorokin was convicted in 2019 and spent more than 3 years behind bars. She has since been challenging deportation. Those are your headlines. From Radio Cayman's newsroom, I'm April Cummings.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. And it truly is an honor that we can see your taxpayer money at work when it comes to education, and the continued investment in tertiary education in particular bodes well for a small community of less than 1 million people. I mean, less than 100,000, where we are spending. See, Ms. Robinson, pay attention.
Absolutely.
And this is where you shared earlier, as you talk about the social work program at UCCI, that the students can start here. They can get the degrees here, they can practice here, but if they choose to travel and to be seconded, they want to take up a work study elsewhere, having the framework here. So together with Ms. Robinson and Ms. Leonora Winter-Young, 4 of the students, Ms. Arch had to get back to work, and this is a dedication, right? I was asking though, just prior to the whole concept, but before I do, does anyone want to maybe share anything else before we continue? Ms. Leonora?
I just wanted to say, Mrs. Robinson said that she has been in this thing for 30 odd years. So I guess if we do cumulatively, we're over 70 years in this thing. Because I am at 45.
That's phenomenal.
Right? So I've gone 45 years. I did 28 years here. And what I would want, and I need to bolt, and what I would want is to see some of these young people really come and take the helm.
And they will.
Right? When I was at DCFS, what I've always said, I wanted a young Caymanian who came back to be sitting in my chair when I leave there. Right? We want to see them develop to the point where we can sit back and we know that the social fabric here is well taken care of because of these young people who will be running the show. I
guess this is what Mr. Bill Adam always talks about publicly, cathedral builders. We hear about nation building, and if we build a capacity, not just the result of resilience, but the aptitude, but also the attitude and the heart that we have in the community, that love, respect, and honor that we have for each other. So we draw alongside. Ms. Marna was talking about people who have their animals. They're not just pets. These are extended members of their families. Yeah. We call our children, Mike and Mary, but we saw Nima are dogs with the same human names as well. And this is family. So with that, I was asking public and private sector, but maybe before I do, Ms. Marna, would you want to speak to that idea that the passion for social work is all-encompassing and extends beyond the individual, extends beyond that thing that may affect a human. It's a wider community impact in terms of access to things, in terms of civility, how we respond, in terms of how we allocate resources to make sure that the most vulnerable, from the elderly to the others who may feel excluded or abandoned or neglected or abused, that they understand that there's an advocate.
Yeah, and I think that's a big issue here. There's a lot of marginalized individuals or people who are often overlooked, that they don't know the resources that are available to them. It's not common knowledge. So that's where the social work provision come in. You link them to the services that they need. So it's not that you're just doing it for them. You're teaching them how to do it. You're giving them the skills necessary and the resources necessary in order for them to help themselves, because you want them to be independent. You want, because that's another thing. They're the own experts of their own lives. you don't know them. You know what they're telling them. What they're telling you, sorry. But they're the ones who know better in regards to what they need. So you're just helping them, just giving them the resources that they need.
Something that Ms. Barnett shared, Ms. Felicia, there is the element of confidentiality. We come to appreciate that increasingly. Now we see data protection legislation. We see a genuine concerted effort to make sure that people's identity, their personal information is protected, not, monetized. But if a community doesn't know something, I think Abigail shared, we assume that we take care of our elderly. And even if there's one person that is being neglected, it may not be anything that is, consciously being done to harm that person. It's just not sufficient attention. That's one person that we don't want to be experiencing that. But what if it's not one person? What if it's a significant percentage of a community? If the community doesn't know, how do we ensure confidentiality, but also ensure that there's knowledge of things that are happening in society without betraying confidences, without embarrassing people, without talking your business in public?
So the social worker has a role to play in terms of educating the community about social issues. So if there may be a problem that's affecting several persons, there is a way of dealing with it then as a social issue, where you're not identifying who exactly is being impacted. But even though you're doing the education or you're raising awareness about the problem, you still have the other bit of the responsibility of helping to address that problem. So simply raising awareness is not enough. Actually doing something to address the impact of that problem on the individual or the individuals is equally important. We see, I think, often within our communities, people raise awareness about particular problems and they just leave it there. And it accumulates and accumulates, and the problem gets larger and larger until, it becomes almost out of...
Right. So how do we get then from, because you referenced earlier the notion of policy formulation, helping to drive the policy. We talk, but they say, talk is cheap, action is what. So from what I'm hearing, if we see an issue, let's say it's littering, for instance, this road is badly littered, but if nobody goes along, individually or collectively, and cleans up the litter, but then somebody does that, and then the next day it's littered again,
So there's a political aspect of the work that social workers do. We call it the macro social work practice, where they are actually out there involved in terms of working with communities to do needs assessments. So they are speaking with people to identify what is the problem here. How do you feel about it? What are the kinds of solutions that you would want to look at? Okay, let's look at what are the kind of resources that you need to address this problem. Have you got it within the community? No. Okay, the social worker may then be engaged in helping to mobilize a response in getting those resources together. Or it might be about helping your community to develop a paper to present to your politicians or to your minister responsible for the issue, whatever. So there's that political aspect of the roles that social workers are trained to play. And that's why we say community organization, community development, which is the macro aspect of social work. It is the political arm of social work. It is the skills that you need actually are, I think, some of the higher level skills is the negotiation skills. It is the ability to mobilize persons together, not to get them to go and do roadblocks and all that sort of stuff. That's not what we're talking about.
That's what it's
even though some communities may opt or may decide that is what they want to do. So how do you help them to do it safely then, if that's what they decide to do? You may want to say to them, well, if this is what you're going to do, you need to get police permission and all that sort of stuff. So those are the kinds of skills that our social workers can bring to communities and help them to address problems.
The
advocacy, the lobbying, the action, helping them to write their papers, helping them to present the issues to their political representatives. It might be about actually bringing community groups together to resolve some of their problems. If you've got a problem where you have children who are left unattended, it might be how do you help them to develop a facility where someone who is unemployed in the community decides to do look after these children and ensure that they're kept safe. So a lot of the solutions, social workers can help communities to develop solutions.
So let me ask, as I think back to Mrs. Arch initially sharing nursing business, Ms. Vanda's approach to I guess your career development to date, covering different facets. Is there a strong overlap with social work and other professions?
Yes. Yes.
But okay.
I would say yes. A lot of persons enter social work not as a first choice. So before I came into social work, I was actually working in special education. I was teaching children, autistic children, and I felt at the time that I just could not deal with real issues there. I was limited. I was in the classroom. I wanted to be able to go into the home. I wanted to be able to have the interface with the parents and look to link these families to the resources that they needed. Yeah. And then I got in social work, and I thought, well, this is just not enough. So I found myself looking to, I need to be more equipped to be able to handle the policy aspect. And when that's finished, and I thought, no, I need to understand the legal framework, because some things need to change, and you can only change it by changing the framework. So a lot of our social workers run journeys, we call it journeys in the field, where we bring our personal experiences, we bring our history, but also social work changes you.
This is where I see, Miss Abigail together with Miss Barnett, their passion, that varied interest in being able to bring together a multifaceted approach to problem solving.
Yes.
So as we go into this break then, is it not just what you share in practice, but I wrote down legislative changes we need to impress upon society. Is this...
I'm smiling because we managed this year, one of our students for the first time is actually placed in the cabinet office, because we believe that social workers have such an important role to play in understanding policy, but also in influencing policy, but being part of the strategic development of policy. And so, we really appreciate that experience and exposure that she's getting in the cabinet office. Legislation is a big part of it. We know that legislation shapes a lot of issues. It helps to define and redefine a lot of things within our community. And there's need for some legislation still,
So if I might, I'll put it on the table as clearly as I can, concisely as I can. So when we come back, we decide if we want to discuss it. There is the legislative aspect of policy, but there's also when it comes to the normative aspect, the morality. We can't legislate for morality. So is it that A, society now has to develop a different perception that social work isn't this thing, is in fact much more encompassing, and then B, how do we get the ethos in society to be one that responds that this is an all-encompass, almost all-inclusive approach to the health and welfare of society relative to stability, civility, sanity, but also the interaction with families and the like. Long enough? All right, we're going to ask that question when we come back. More talk today.
Busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Tune in Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. for the Daily Sports Report, covering local, regional, and international sports. Proudly brought to you by Dr. Wayne Porter, offering a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. Call 946-9020 to book your appointment today.
Raising children is costly. That is why each year the Ministry of Education provides, through its Early Childhood Assistance Program, funding to assist Caymanian children to attend an early childhood center. For early childhood funding assistance, call the Early Childhood Care and Education Unit at 244-3155 or 936-0267, or download an application form from the ministry's website at www.gov.ky/education and email the completed form to ecap@gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thank you very, very much for joining us. And I'm really honored that we see the level of instruction, the investment, the enthusiasm, the interest, but the sense of discipline and dogged determination of our students and their approach to studies. And when we think of social work, I'm honored that we get a chance to focus on not the social work day, but the social work program at UCCI. And I think Ms. Felicia Robinson, as the program director, together with Associate Professors Nero Winter Young, and 4 of the students, Ms. Krishna Arch, went back to work. So Ms. Van der Pur, year 4, Ms. Betty Brown, together with Ms. Estefania Barnett in the 4th year, and then 3rd year, soon before, and then masters, and then her doctorate level, and then law school.
That's her plan, yes.
Yeah. Trust me,
yes.
We can see it, and then she'll be ably guided by Miss Abigail, because I think if you would allow me to publicly your forthrightness, your assertiveness, the professionalism that you bring. It's amazing. You have a wonderful, positive, engaging, and nurturing spirit, man. That is amazing. And I think you have a great student body here.
Thank you.
Really, really is.
Thank you very much, Dwayne.
And she's polite as well.
Very positive, very polite, but I think no nonsense. And I like that, because I think honesty is the one thing that helps us. And I think it's better, as we were asking earlier, we see the perception of social work. We see the need sometimes through legislation. Just in Cayman, new laws were introduced, let's say in the last decade. We see amendments to laws because the growing practice and experience by people who say, well, these laws no longer afford us to be able to respond to our clientele. They don't serve the interest of the population. But then there are times where you can pass a law, if I might respectfully say, okay, don't litter. It's going to be a $5 million fine. But if people don't respect the law, don't appreciate it, there's no enforcement, if there's no need within society to understand the ethos and the importance of, we don't litter like this here. We don't. How do we get us as a people not to appreciate that social work is no longer coming and taking you but we hear you advocate and your friend and we have it. But also, let's don't need to pass laws to beat people. Let's have a cultural ethos that we do right by our people. As your classmate, Ms. Abigail shared, or elderly, we need to respect them and take care of them, and not turn a blind eye to whatever level of neglect or inattention.
Well, first, I think we need to remember that we were always a helping community. Cayman back in the days, it was always a united village, and I think if we bring that outlook back, you'll understand that we as social workers aren't coming in to destroy your home or take away from the family. We want to build on what you already have and make a proper foundation, so that when you're raising your kids or you're raising your grandkids, that they have futures brighter than the ones that we are currently standing in. And I think for me, that's the outlook we need to go back to, and the community as a whole need to come back and think about opening doors for us to come in and assist, and community itself, like you as an individual assisting somebody else, you see an elderly person struggling, why is that not your instinct to go out and assist and help that person as you would do your child or somebody else? When we come back to that ground, I think we'll have a brighter future.
Yeah, a neighbor's keeper, be that for that person. Yeah. Anyone else wishes to jump in? Estefania?
Not only that, but I think accountability is also necessary, especially like when you guys mentioned the elderly. Just because it's only a few of them, it doesn't make it okay. And people have to be held accountable for what they're doing. Like, there has to be punishment for whatever abuse they might be imposing on an elderly person. So I guess accountability on the person, but also from the government bodies that do the legislations and the laws.
If I might ask then, when we look at that whole idea of sort of social work, we've seen the change in perception of it, we've seen the indelible impact it's had on our society, and as we look at the interaction or an overlap between other professions, are we of a space where within the Cayman context in particular, the social worker, whether in the public or the private sector, is sort of the go-to, the tag-along for the mental health aspect, the negotiator mediator with policing, the advocate before the courts as part of the social justice system, and more of us being drawn to it, and the curriculum, Ms. Felicia, being expanded. You're talking about, green being a new part, almost in every strategy, from investment to the teaching of different things. How do you see social work then in its evolution?
So, I would say, Dwayne, that as social workers, we've got to own the profession. We've got to own that we operate at a high calling, but that we also are trained and given an excellent range of tools, and that they are tools that are used throughout our communities and in almost every area of employment. So you hear, for example, within the legal system, you hear about moving from, an approach where the judiciary made the decisions now to where people are more engaged and involved in negotiating their outcomes and decisions. Arbitration and so on.
Right.
All of those skills really started with social work. More than 30-something years ago when I was trained, we were trained in mediation, conflict resolution.
Long before they became...
long before they seemed to be owned by the legal system in terms of how they're used now, that setup. So our students also do a course in conflict resolution and mediation because those skills are still as important now as they were then.
If not more so.
Yes. 30 years ago, a lot of our social workers, when I started training, a lot of our social workers were starting to go into what was called industrial social work, where they were being hired in HR roles because they had the people skills. They could do the interviewing, they could do the assessment, they could map out plans for personal development of individuals and so on. Those roles and skills are still very much part of our training and still relevant today.
So from that
we were trained to do coaching of individuals. You mentor persons. That has taken on a whole new discipline front. But we're still training when we work with our students. They still know that they've got to coach, they've got to mentor clients, they've got to figure out how to support them in their development and moving them from point A to B. So those skills, every possible skill that you can think you need to function in any employment setting, our workers are our students are being trained in.
So from the counselor to the career advisor,
all of that,
to the parent, to that friend. If I could maybe in closing ask this question, and of course invite you to share whatever you wish in every respect. I'd asked, and I think Ms. Felicia and Derek answered much with particular attributes and skill sets that you think a social worker brings to the table, or that a person who wants to pursue a career in social work should possess. We would think if you want to be an accountant engineer, you have good math skill. You're interested in law, perhaps reading and writing may be good. But Estefan, if you want to start first, or Ms. Abigail, what particular skill sets, attributes, passions, enthusiasms, abilities, and the like that you think a social worker should have, or a person with those skills would be naturally sort of inclined to benefit from that role?
Well, honestly, I don't even think that sometimes it's naturally. Sometimes I think because of what you experience in the job, you kind of like, those things kind of just grow. Like, you deal with difficult people, and then you see where you've grown a little bit more patient, that kind of stuff. So I think there isn't anything. Well, personally, I don't think there's anything specifically. I think you just have to be like well-rounded. Like, you know, you got to be able to pretty much tackle anything that comes your way, type of thing, because you never know what the day might hold. You know.
Awesome. Is that funny?
I think you have to be. You have to have empathy when working in this profession, because you're dealing with so many people with different backgrounds, different traumas in some cases. So you have to be empathetic, but you also have to respect them as an individual. That, like I mentioned before, they know what they've been through. Like, they're the experts in their own lives. You also have to have, because this is a learning profession. You never stop learning. Like, there's always something new. There's always some new theory or a new way to approach a problem. So you have to have that in mind. You have to want to learn all the time.
That propensity to learn, I appreciate that. That's how you grow. That's how you contribute. It's better from your perspective. I mean, whether it's repetition or anything else you want to share.
To me, I think you have to be non-judgmental, because you have to meet people where they're at. In this profession, so seeing them, you're coming into their environment and seeing them in a position to hope to bring them to somewhere better, and not judging off of what you see. They look like, or they speak in this particular crisis, but the person that you hope their future self would become.
Oh, awesome. So, what about you?
I think being a people person, someone who's honest. Someone who can empathize, meet people where they're at and help them to build on their strengths, to really have a positive outcome, for them. I'd like to say that I think for all of us, it's been a really great experience so far at UCCI during the social work program. And I'd like to encourage, persons to call UCCI or make contact with Mrs. Robinson or Mrs. Lenora or any of us as students. It's very fulfilling. It's right here. It's local. You can stay grounded in your job. You can still meet your family's needs, while furthering your education. So it's a really great opportunity to be a part of the social work program here in the Cayman Islands.
Awesome. I commend you all, man. And Ms. Felicia, perhaps in closing, we sort of indirectly maybe left the impression for some people that these are students, who are in there. But I'm thinking for those of us who are already in a career, who may not feel that level of fulfillment, maybe we want to change from what we're doing.
The time is right.
Yes.
The time is right for you to think of social work. Contact us. We have persons who are considering social work as a second career or career change. Not all of our students are school leavers. But we do have some school leavers as well. But this is the right time. This is the right time to think about it, to consider it. If you want to make a contribution which is significant to your community, if you want to be engaged in something that will impact lives, but will also change who you are, this is a good time to think about it, because shortly we are going to be starting doing interviews for our new candidates for the next academic year.
Well, if we can help to encourage further education, to empower, our society and to really, really build that cohesive unit, please let us know.
I want to say a special thank you to all those agencies that have facilitated our practicum, and to those persons who supervise the students. We know that it's additional work we're giving them, but they have willingly accepted, and we really, really appreciate it.
Could not do it without that.
Okay.
Well, I thank you for that, because I was going to share that this is a partnership, and like
definitely
any job where we need an internship or whatever we call it, but we need that person, from the young law student, to the accountant, to the social worker, to the apprentice in one of the trades. We learn, and as Stefani shared, you constantly learn, and the more you learn, the more skilled you become, the more empathetic you are, the better engaged you become in responding to your clientele. So it's been a true honor. You've made my day. You've inspired me.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, the invitation stands if, together, Ms. Robinson, with any of future students, post-graduation or otherwise, that you wish to come in. let us know, because the more of us that encourage each other to further study, the more I think we'll make a more profound contribution. So thanks very much.
Happy Social Workers Day.
Happy Social Workers Day to all the social workers who are practicing out there.
All right, maybe we should say in unison on 3.
Great.
Yeah, ready? 1. Okay, 1,
Dos, tres.
Happy Social Workers Day.
And to you and all.
Thank you.
All right, tomorrow's another day, man. Come back and be blessed, be privileged, and be of great joy. Until then.
To you, our public.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.